Welcome to Musclebox Radio. I'm your host, Stephen Box, and my co-host is Michael Harrison. This show is going to be all about nutrition, training, bodybuilding, with loads of banter. We're going to be giving you the evidence, the science, and breaking that down with the help of some amazing guests and industry leaders to give you that application. So make sure you subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the show. Musclebox Radio, episode 4. Miguel, loving the hairband, bro.
Hola.
Baxter, you know I didn't speak Spanish.
Yeah, I've gone for the hairband today. I'm aware that it looks dreadful. Don't worry.
Mate,
but
I've just had mine cut today.
looking sweet, mate.
Yeah, the schoolboy approach I've gone for.
Yeah, the schoolboy crew cut. Yeah, it's nice.
Now I'm getting shredded.
12, yeah, the same haircut.
Yeah. Now I'm getting shredded. My cheekbones are coming in.
Mm.
I literally get younger as I diet.
Yeah, I get older, I'm more decrepit.
You turn into a zombie.
Yeah.
I go back to doing a paper round.
I look absolutely dreadful.
You do.
I just so that I think you know this, but just so the listeners know that after I was about a week away from my first show, and I went home, and my mum actually cried at me when she saw my face. So that's always nice, isn't it? When you've not seen your mum for a few months, and she cries, saying that I'm not her son. Oh,
mate, when you turn up behind me at Body Power, I nearly shit myself. I thought it was something out of The Conjuring.
Walking Dead.
Yeah. I was waiting for Rick Grimes to come running around the corner and save me. Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait for that again. Yes.
Diet face, here we go.
Yeah.
But then last time you prepped with me, your diet face wasn't nearly as bad, was it?
That's because I had this luscious beard covering it up, though. It wasn't as bad, but I think the beard definitely helped me in that department. Yeah, so I like to have the beard when I'm fat because it covers up my 3 chins, and I like it when I'm thin because it covers up my gaunt, deathly looking, disease-ridden face.
So probably about now, if you shaved, you'd actually look alright.
Yeah, I'd probably look pretty handsome if it wasn't for the fucking shit hair.
Yeah. Anyway, we've kind of blabbed on for a while, so
yeah. Just keep doing that. Just keep pulling me down. That's fine.
That's my mate. Well, I always get the no gains box, so it's only You've got buttons that I can press, and I'm going to be pressing them. You
always do.
It's game on, remember?
Game on.
Yeah, the mind games. That's where the real battle happens.
So what are we talking about today?
Right, so obviously last week we had the epic Varushka on, and I've been inundated with emails, Instagram messages saying how great it's been, and it was truly in fucking sick podcast, wasn't it?
Yeah, same. I'd say inundated, but probably about 3 people.
Yeah, I mean that's inundated for me, mate. 3.
Yeah. Snowed under. But yeah, she was awesome. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be as good as what it was, and I've never spoke to her before, and that was great for me to speak to her. She's a great guest to have, and hopefully get her back on again in the future. Yeah,
definitely. I'm just about to post her before after pictures, which are going to look like unbelievable. And to see the progress she's made in a year, and that's exactly what we want to do as a company, isn't it? Not get people in great shape, but get them in better shape every single year.
Yeah.
So then every time they step on stage, they know they're getting higher places, they know they're improving, not just kind of, look at us, we do great transformations, but then they turn back to looking like a sock full of custard, as you would say.
Yeah.
And that is the worst, because I really enjoy custard, and now I feel like there's this bad connotation around custard.
Well, it's not, custard's lovely to eat, but would you want to look like a sock full of it?
No, not really, mate.
No,
especially if you heat it too much and it starts to get that horrible skin on top.
Bag of soup. Again, soup's nice.
It is.
But can you imagine a bag of it?
No, mate, I can't.
In human form. Look at my progress photos from about February time.
Yeah.
Then you'll be able to imagine it just a little bit clearer.
Right, so obviously that was last week. The week before that, we covered the first part of our pyramid, didn't we? And the pyramid, if you haven't listened to episode 2, we basically spoke about the team box or our coaching pyramid, which is kind of like our foundations and priorities, and then working upwards to the kind of most important. Most people, as you'll know, when they, and I'm a typical for this. Oh, it's so embarrassing the other day. I met up with some friends. I kind of
you haven't got any friends.
Yeah, I know this. Look, I'm getting onto that. So I met up with some friends that I haven't seen in like 6-7 years, like a long time. And this was back when I was so bro. And they were like, yeah, back last time we saw you, we asked you, would you eat a McDonald's? And I think my reply was, well, it depends on what time I'd eat that.
Got to be after a post-leg session, yeah?
Yeah, and I was like, look, like I just said, I'm really sorry. Ignore anything I ever said to you 7 years ago. Just ignore it. It was bullshit.
They did say, Steve, you're exactly the same size and you've still got the same haircut.
No, they said I'd grown twice the size, actually.
Twice the size? That's an exaggeration.
It's not, mate.
Exaggeration. What were you, a borrower the last time?
Yeah, then my nickname was Gimli.
Gimp.
So, obviously, back then, my pyramid was based on timing, real important.
Yeah. Supplements.
Yep. Super important. And we're going to get on to supplementation later, aren't we? We got a listener question on supplements and post-workout supplementation. I've got a great guest, hopefully, if he agrees to come on, to talk all about nutrient timing, which is going to be sweet. At some point, but I won't say anything yet until that's confirmed, because I don't want to be that guy, who goes, oh yeah, we've got so-and-so coming on, and then don't actually come on, because then that's just poo.
Custard pie. A big fat custard pie to the face.
Yeah, there's me walking around with egg on my face.
Yeah, only post-workout though.
Yeah, my pyramid was all over the place, and I was just in a position where I wasn't able to understand why I was in the shape I was in, because I was like, doing my fashion modelling stuff. I was lean, I had a six-pack, walking around thinking, people just, and it's not really my fault either, because I didn't really know that much better. I was training to be a PE teacher, so it wasn't in my area of expertise, but people obviously just ask you questions, and you don't just go there and go, well, I don't know anything, because they're like, oh, you must do, look at you, and then you kind of just talk about what you do, but you don't understand, or I didn't understand, the scientific principles behind what was actually happening. And you can only speak from experience, and that unfortunately comes across as bro science.
Yep.
And that's how it happens.
Verushka said something similar last week, didn't she? And the fact that people used to go and ask her this and that and questions, and she didn't have a clue about nutrition, but because she's in shape, people automatically assume. And I've got a friend who is 8-packed up year-round, barely trains, and when he does, it's dreadful. He doesn't know anything about nutrition, so much so that we were sat eating a meal once, and he was eating gammon, and he said, I love fish. And we looked at each other, and we were like, what? He was like, oh, I love a bit of fish, mate. And we were like, you do realise gammon is from a pig? And he said, nah, it's not it. And he was like sort of laughing, going, are you having me on? And we were like, no, gammon's from a fish. We were like, gammon's from a pig. Do you mean salmon? And he was like, I don't know. But like, to anybody else who looks at him, they'll think, he must know what he's doing. Fucking hell, clueless.
You don't know the difference between gammon and salmon.
Clueless.
Sounds similar, though.
It does sound similar. It would be easy to get confused, I can see that. However, I imagine eating it would pretty much clear that up.
Oh, mate, that is funny. I watched a YouTube video the other day where basically this guy asked for a tuna steak.
Yeah.
Did you see this one?
Nope.
It's unbelievable, mate. It's going around on Facebook. Guy asked his girlfriend or wife for a tuna steak. He goes into the kitchen. He's like, you all right, love? And she's like, yeah, I'm making you dinner. Get out of my kitchen. He's like, all right. And then he goes out and he goes, I'm not sure what she's doing. I've asked for a tuna steak and she's cooking a steak.
Right.
So anyway, he sat at the table. Girl comes along and she puts the plate on the table and she puts a steak down with tuna on top.
Amazing.
And he's like, what's that? And she goes, it's your tuna steak you asked for. And he's like, no, I asked for a tuna steak. You've given me steak with tuna on. He goes, I can see where you've got confused, but there's tuna steaks in the freezer. You just had to cook one. She wouldn't have any of it.
Surf and turf.
Yeah.
Surf and turf, baby.
So, obviously I used to be a complete bro, getting back to that, which I'm fine with because I wasn't in a position to know better. Now, I would like to think I'm slightly more informed. But, we spoke about energy balance, didn't we, on episode 2?
Yeah.
And how calories in, calories out ultimately is the most important thing. We spoke about what also makes up calorie balance, so the 4 compartmental of energy expenditure, and then also the 4 parts of energy intake. So we'll get into now, and I think we briefly touched on the macronutrients, which is our kind of level 2. Level 3 is what we deem mindful eating, and we'll go into a little bit more of that. And then finally, our last bit of the pyramid, which I used to think was most important, was timing. So if we can whiz through that, get that sealed off today, and then we're going to do a whole show on, for example, protein, but we can do that later on once we've, got into the nitty-gritty a little bit more. So let's just give a good overview today, Mike.
Let's do it.
Right, macronutrients. Let's go. What are we going to talk about with each one?
So protein, we'll go maybe timing, type, function, something like that.
Yeah.
Energy yield.
Yeah, let's start off with function.
So function, protein, obviously building blocks of the body. So muscle tissue, connective tissue. It's component of like peptide hormones. It's involved in nice.
Yeah, peptides.
Boxy just flexed for anybody just listening, and also for anybody just watching, because that could, people probably wouldn't know what that was.
Yeah.
It's involved in chemical reactions around the body, such as digestion. It's involved in uses of energy when muscle glycogen is low. It promotes satiety, so studies show that a higher protein diet leads to greater satiety. I think that's pretty much everything.
Well, and
roughly.
Also it spikes muscle protein synthesis.
Yeah, I covered that with the muscle tissue.
Yeah, you did, yeah. So from, I think, what most people are interested in who are probably listening to the show, all we really care about is how to build more muscle and then how to maintain muscle when you go into a diet, really, isn't it? So
I think so. And the satiety bit, maybe a little bit when you're dieting, would come into it.
Yeah. So I think the kind of from the hormonal point of view and the other aspects, which are obviously crucial for overall health, we'll just assume they're a given.
Yeah.
And let's just really talk about kind of, muscle gain, muscle hypertrophy, essentially, and then muscle retention. In protein's going to be a key factor for that. So that's the kind of function part nailed off. So when it comes to, if we look at types of protein, obviously there's different types of protein that you can ingest. And these are basically categorized off by the amino acids, and there are some essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids. Some have to be ingested, and some can be synthesized through other nutrients within the body anyway. So the essential ones are the ones that you have to ingest. Have I got that right? I think so.
Yeah.
And that's essentially why BCAAs were brought out as a product, because they contain 3 of the essential amino acids and also are responsible for spiking muscle protein synthesis, which is an amino acid called leucine, if you haven't heard of that one before. So there's, with every type of food, there's generally, I would say 90% of foods or something like that, a high amount, are going to contain some sort of protein, because nowadays, not nowadays, has always been the case, but within the nowadays more people are using things like MyFitnessPal. I think it's becoming more common that people are understanding that there's protein within other foods, and people don't just look at a food and think that's a carb, that's a fat, that's a protein. It's actually, okay, that food is higher in protein and a certain amount of fat and maybe some carbohydrates. So well, a lot of foods do have a kind of a blend, don't they?
Yeah, sure. So obviously your common protein sources, which would be sort of meats and seafood and whey, eggs, dairy, things like that. But you are like you say, you're probably going to get roughly, depending on your intake, 20 grams from other sources. That might be protein in your rice,
In your oats, yeah.
in your oats. Yeah. So you can't just eat all of your protein allowance from pure meat, because you're going to get some residual from the other things that you're eating.
Yeah. So essentially, when we're talking about protein rich, we're looking for those sorts of protein meals or protein sources that are containing a high amount of amino acids and have a higher amino acid profile. So yeah, we're talking about your chicken, your whey protein, your fish, beef, eggs. Yeah, so there's some really fantastic sources. And then there can be times when a combination of proteins can be good and used together in order to complete that amino acid profile. It's not something I think most beginners or people just looking at protein need to worry about, but I think it can become important later down the line, especially when that you're in a severe calorie deficit. You want to make sure that you are maximizing muscle protein synthesis.
Sure.
So when we're talking about protein-rich foods, that's you kind of get the idea. It could be obviously for if you're like vegetarian. Things like milk's another good source, isn't it? And then obviously
beans and pulses.
Yeah, they would be where you would need to combine maybe some protein sources together. But things like rice protein and those of a supplementation, soya protein.
My girlfriend's a veggie, and even things like corn and tofu is pretty decent for protein, and it's just a meat substitute, isn't it?
Yeah.
And some of it actually tastes all right.
Yeah.
I'm not scared to say it.
Mate, I love a bit of miso soup when I go to Yo Sushi.
Yeah.
Yeah, mate, I love a bit of that. Yeah. So so that's kind of your protein-rich sources of foods that when we speak about next, it's kind of like when we break this down into feedings. So then we've covered type, and then if we cover total, so total could be not only across your day, but then also broken down into total protein in a meal, right?
Yeah.
So what are our recommendations for let's start off with big picture. The most important thing about protein is to get your daily amount in, right?
Yeah. So I would say that anybody in the sort of athletic population that's wanting to have benefits towards body composition, training regularly, anywhere between 2.3 grams to 3.1 grams per kilo of body weight.
Yeah, definitely. No, nice. Yeah, that's exactly it, mate. And I think a lot of there's a lot of research out there that 2.2 grams is what a weight training individual needs. But remember, for a lot of those individuals, they're not in a calorie deficit, are they? And that's going to make a difference of the requirements. And a lot of the time, that is for performance-based, more athletic rather than body composition focused. So for us guys who are looking, and ladies who are looking to improve body composition, it could be more beneficial to have a slightly higher protein intake. Now, when I'm working with clients, for me personally, I work within this range of 2.3 to 3.1. It doesn't necessarily that's grams per kilo body weight. So if you've got a 100 kilo guy and you want to put him on 3 grams per kilo, that's 300 grams of protein per day. And again, that's across the entire board of his food, not just chicken, not just beef. It's what he's getting from his rice, his oats, his sweet potato, his chicken, the total amount. For me personally, what I'll do is a dietary recall, and I'll kind of have a good indication of what that individual's actually ingesting. I can work out roughly on average what that person likes as a gram per kilo, and then based on their so I've kind of used preference as a marker, and then what we can start to do is look at is that individual going to be going in a calorie deficit? Is their carbohydrate intake going to be low? And then we can start to, put them on that scale, essentially. Obviously, we do have to put out a little bit of a disclaimer that clinical restrictions may apply. So, obviously, if you, have an issue like that, it's going to be worth consulting your doctor about, obviously, having a higher protein intake. For example, people with one kidney, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So
I think within that range would again depend on your goal. Obviously, preference would come first, because whatever you can stick to, you're going to be most consistent with. But then you could have a sort of a range, and I think people get a little bit confused, beginners, and think, protein means muscle gain, so I've got to eat all the protein. And like, I remember years and years and years ago, there was a big guy in the gym, and I think one of my friends spoke to him, and he came back to me and said the guy drinks 10 protein shakes a day.
Strong.
Yeah. And it's just like, people think that, protein's good, so I've got to eat all the protein in sight because that's going to be better, when it's not the case. There's a top end, so to speak, where you're not going to get any sort of benefit to anabolism above that. But so in terms of where you would say it between that, I think what is generally thought is that when you're trying to bulk up, you've got to have more protein, where in effect we work a little bit different to that, where you perhaps would be at the lower end of the scale, and when you're actually dieting, you would be ingesting more protein towards the upper end of the scale. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, and also what we've got to think about is, obviously, you're going to have, whether you're in a calorie surplus or a calorie deficit, you're going to have this allowance of kind of calories. So the more calories that you're eating from protein, in 1 gram of protein, and I don't mean 1 gram of chicken, I mean a 1 gram of protein found in, for example, chicken or meat or whey, contains 4 calories. So if you're consuming, let's say a ridiculous amount of 5 grams per kilo up at 500 grams, that could be 200 grams extra than what that individual may have needed, for example. Take that 100 kilo guy again. So then that 200 times by 4 is 800 calories that person is now consuming a protein which they now cannot eat of carbohydrates and fats. So overeating protein is essentially going to, you're going to have to compensate and reduce your fat and carbohydrate intake.
Yeah.
So the reason why we would maybe go a little bit lower with someone in a calorie surplus, so someone who's eating a lot of calories, looking to gain muscle, is because they're eating so much carbohydrates that especially with weight training, there is a minimal risk of actually ever breaking down into proteins and using that as an energy source. Whereas when someone's in a deficit, we want to maintain as much muscle protein as possible within the body, so that we can prevent as much muscle breakdown. So that's why we'd potentially keep protein higher. And again, you mentioned satiety. So
Yeah, I'd say it's a lot more important dieting than when you're trying to bulk, because sure, I mean, you might still by preference want to eat 3 grams per kilo when you're bulking, and in reality, that 30 or 40 grams of extra carbohydrates that you could have had when you're in a surplus anyway, I'm probably ingesting a huge amount. It's probably not going to have that much of a detriment.
Yeah.
So I think to performance, so to speak. But so I think going upward, bulking, it would largely come down to preference, but you don't need as much as what you probably first thought that you did.
Yeah, to be honest with mine, I keep my protein intake pretty consistent across the year.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like my baseline when I'm in my off season, and when I come into prep, I want to try and maintain that as much as possible. And obviously, as I lose weight, I can actually drop a little bit of protein. And I can still stay on that same grams per kilo, because I don't need as much, because I don't have as much body weight. So I think we've kind of summed that up nicely. And there has been times when, even with a client, I've had to break it down and take away protein from that client and actually put them at what we would deem on the lower end of that spectrum. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more technical, and it goes into the the protein ingestion per meal, and I think we're probably better off saving that for another podcast, don't you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got some guests who could speak at greater length than us, but if we just give maybe just a quick overview, because it's quite interesting.
So for me, the reason why we also want to look at your potentially timing, and we go for normally 3 to 5 meals a day, and you space those out 3 to 5 hours apart. That means that you're going to spike muscle protein synthesis. As that drops back down again within that window of 3 to 5 hours, you can spike muscle protein synthesis again. So you can kind of get this fluctuation across the day, rather than just keeping things, for example, elevated across the whole day, like a lot of bodybuilders do if they're eating kind of every 1.5 hours or every 2 hours. Might not actually be as optimal as they may think. Now, in order to spike muscle protein synthesis, with whey protein, which is a very bioavailable, very leucine-rich food, the research has been shown to suggest that 0.3, so 0.3 grams per kilo, is what's needed in order to do that. Now, that's only with whey protein, so we can't use that recommendation when we're working with other mixed meals, because it's not as leucine rich as, for example, whey. So what we normally go for is 0.5. You're on the slightly higher end. So, for example, an 80 kilo guy, that's going to be about a 40 gram serving of protein from a, let's call it a reasonably rich amino acid source. So like chicken, eggs, beef, fish, maybe your gammon or your salmon. So yeah, you're kind of 0.5 is a pretty good indication per day. So, for example, if you were to have 0.5 grams per kilo of each meal, and you were to have 5 meals a day, that puts you at 2.5 grams per kilo in your total day, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Nice. Easy. Simples.
Easy as that.
But obviously, when it comes to the practical approach of that, I don't sit there and try and work out exactly 40 grams, although I'm around that 80 kilo mark. So I'm a little bit higher than 2.5, maybe 2.7. And, some meals might be 50 grams for me, some meals might be 60, other meals might be 35. So it kind of depends on my day, practically how I work that. But the most important thing I focus on is eating good sources of protein throughout my day. And then, if I can split that over 5 meals, brilliant. Maybe even a 6th meal if I have one before I go to bed, or even intra-sleep. We can talk about that on another podcast. And that's pretty much me, really.
Yeah, I'm very much the same. I don't worry about exact grams. I know some bros like to say you must eat 37 grams exactly per meal, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't worry about that. I worry about the total intake over the day. And then if you think about normal eating patterns anyway, you get up and have your breakfast at, 8 o'clock?
Yeah.
And then 4 hours later, it's lunchtime. So that would fit within the remit. So again, another serving at lunchtime. And then you might have a meal, let's say, before you train, 3, 4 o'clock, something like that. Then you might train. So again, you've waited 3 or 4 hours. You train, you get back home, you cook a meal, which might have, you might have had an hour, you might have eaten an hour before you trained, you've trained for an hour, you've taken an hour to cook, so again, another 3 hours, and then you might have a snack before bed again. So if you think about normal everyday eating patterns anyway, there's not really a great case to sort of deviate much from that. So splitting it up over, 6, 7, 8 meals a day or whatever, I don't care about, it's the total amount, and you're never going to be that far off that you're going to do yourself any detriment.
Yeah. And it's only to the point of, let's say you're Phil Heath and you're looking to be Mr. Olympia, and over a course of, let's say, 10 years, maybe 20 years, if you can fit in that, that spike of muscle protein synthesis, the difference between 8 to 7 meals, then that might have a benefit over that sort of longitudinal approach. But, for most people, even if you want to compete at a decent level, it's just not needed,
We look at the muscle mass on Phil Heath, though. So the amount of protein he's going to need to ingest for his sheer size is going to be so far and above what we would need to eat anyway. So the chances are he's going to need to have more protein servings.
Yeah, to get that in,
to get it all in, rather than larger bolus meals.
And this is why it's ridiculous as well. When you see this is what I saw on Facebook last week. This is how much meat and protein The Rock eats per week. The Rock's fucking massive.
Yeah.
No, dude, you're 70 kilos, like me.
Yeah.
You don't need that much.
Yeah.
You're just going to end up wasting protein, wasting money buying all those meat cuts, and you're just not going to be able to eat those carbs.
Yeah.
And you ultimately, if you started eating The Rock's diet, if I started doing that, I'm going to get fat. no matter how clean it is, if I'm overeating calories, I'm going to gain fat.
Yeah.
So,
exactly right.
Boom.
I think we've nailed protein.
Mate, we have now. Is there anything else we want to talk about protein? No, timing we've pretty much covered.
Type we've covered.
Yeah, we've covered type.
Energy yield.
Covered that, 4 calories per gram. So that's it. So we'll take a little break and then we'll be back with you very shortly. Right, we're back from the break. So, just a quick announcement, and there is still time if you wanted to enter in the MuscleFood £75 voucher competition. So thank you so much to everyone who has already subscribed to the show. We honestly can't, be grateful enough for you for doing that. We're still up there in the charts, which is great. And yeah, a huge thanks to MuscleFood for putting on the competition for us. So the competition is you need to subscribe to the show. This show. You then need to leave a 5-star rating, ideally, or you can give us less if you want, if you don't think we're that good, and then write a quick review about what you think about the podcast. If you like Mike's hair, you like my lack of gains, whatever it is, that'll be good. So then the competition is announced over on the Teambox UK Facebook page. Did we say Saturday?
Yeah, so tomorrow.
Well, this show kind of comes out Thursday night, Friday morning.
So tomorrow. Yeah.
Basically, yeah. So entries are going to cut off the 17th at midnight, and I will screenshot what is there at that time. So if your entry isn't in there, there's not a great deal that I can do, and then the winner will be announced. So
get it in.
Get it in, yeah.
Get it in. Wow.
And obviously, this is only for UK residents because of MuscleFood delivery. If a winner's chosen and they're maybe outside, maybe we can run something else at some point in the future.
We're very big in Uzbekistan, so apologies to all you guys.
That is our biggest following, mate.
Yeah, we're celebrities out there.
Yeah. So, right, what are we on to next, Mike?
Carbohydrates.
Carbohydrates. Okay.
Let's do it.
Function.
So yeah, carbohydrates.
Rocket fuel.
Yep, stored in the muscle and also in the liver as glycogen, which is a substrate for energy and muscular contraction. So when you're training, you will be primarily using muscle glycogen to perform that exercise. So it would make it would be pretty obvious. It would be pretty obvious that carbohydrates would be needed in the diet of an athlete or somebody that is wanting to maintain
muscle contractions.
A decent amount of performance. That's pretty much it. They're not essential, but they are essential for performance. Yeah,
and also within carbohydrates is fiber. So dietary fiber is a type of carbohydrate which is obviously paramount for digestion. So if there was ever, I think, going to be an essential carbohydrate, it would be dietary fiber. A lot of the recommendations are around 25 to 35 grams a day of fiber. It can get a little bit more specific, but is a general rule of thumb. That's not a bad one. So yeah, if there was ever an essential carbohydrate, it would be dietary fiber, which is kind of what you get from your fruit and vegetables.
Yeah, so
whole grains, pulses, seeds, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so I think if you sort of adhere to the mindful eating, how we do, and you get 80% of your food from single ingredient, you're pretty much going to be covered in terms of fiber. Obviously, too little fiber can affect digestion, and also too much fiber. So sometimes if you're particularly high in bro foods, then it can upset your digestion. So have a little bit of sugar.
Have I ever told you about my Quest bar story?
Oh God! So you know Quest bars.
So this was the days before carb killer bars. I know they were bad days.
Dark days.
Dark days, even before the Mars protein bars. But anyway,
it's like before they invented fire.
I know. So Quest bars contain, is it 15 to 20 grams of fiber per bar? Is that right?
It's a hell of a lot.
Yeah. So basically, I had to go to Belgium for a photo shoot, and I had to get the train to London. I then had to get a tube across town to get to London City Airport, which is on the opposite side of Paddington, which I had to get to, and then I had to fly to Belgium. Now, my train was delayed by an hour, so I was already on the back foot, and I planned to get sushi when I got to Paddington. That didn't happen because I was already an hour late, so I had to sack off sushi. So I had a Quest bar. So then I got the tube, but there was strikes, so then I had to get a bus and then walk a fair distance to the and then a taxi finally to the airport. So I was back even further than planned. And then when I got there was no food really available that I could eat. So I essentially had another 2 Quest bars. And they're not really that filling when you're just eating Quest bars. And I had like a piece of fruit or something, but I didn't really have anything substantial. And whilst I was in a calorie deficit, I ended up eating 6 Quest bars in a day.
Oh my God.
The next day, I can assure you, I've never looked so bloated. And I didn't actually go for a shit for 4 days.
Oh my God.
Mate, and I tell you what, it was not pleasant.
I can imagine.
So, too much fibre, not good.
Not good.
Not good.
Again, some fibre is good, all the fibre, not good.
Yeah. That is where mindful eating, I was not mindful, and I just ate, well, I had to eat, so I'll never make that mistake again. I would have been better off not eating.
Yeah.
Than, yeah. Anyway, so that was that. That was my little story about poo.
Nice. Let's hope I never have to tell one of mine.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So we're gonna.
That's got nothing to do with fibre.
Me and Mike have decided we are gonna have a low carb versus high carb debate. We're gonna get some of the other Team Box coaches on as well to also join in our debate. I am gonna be on the side of the Jedis, which is high carb. You are on the side of the Sith, which is low carb.
Excellent.
And we're gonna debate it out.
Yeah.
And you guys can make your own assumptions which you think is better. We're just going to take today, carbs are pretty essential for high performance exercise and dietary fibre, but it's not an essential macronutrient. Now, fat intake. The function of fat is for your general well-being. So, we're talking, for example, the absorption of vitamins and some minerals. It's also a great lubricant. Not for sex games, but actually for
Coconut oil could be used though.
It could be, mate. Yeah. No, yeah, and
Smell like a bounty.
So yeah, it's essentially there for good hormone function, general well-being, and you need an essential amount just to even stay alive, right?
Yeah. So obviously you can get some energy production from fats and improve satiety and mental cognition and things like that. But yeah, you do need a basal amount within the diet.
And again, there are essential fatty acids that you need to ingest, which is why omega-3 is so popular. So kind of like your fish oils, really. Again, because they can't be, what would be the word?
They can't be produced by the body. You've got to.
Yeah, not even produced, but converted, isn't it?
Converted,
to DHA. So essentially, that is the real essential part of fish oil that needs to be ingested, is that EPA and DHA. So that's kind of the ratio that you're looking for. And it's a transporter for vitamins. Transmission for nerve signals, that kind of stuff. So yeah. Protects your vital organs, and also again another good one for satiety. So yeah, fat's pretty essential, so you need to keep a base level amount in your diet anyway. So we'll obviously go over that in our debate. So we're not going to talk about total or types, we're just going to talk about the function. So you've got a good understanding now of roughly carbohydrates and fats, both used for energy, both make up part of your calorie allowance for the day, but whether you swing high carb or just swingers in general, there's nothing wrong with swinging, for some people they like that. But if you want to go low carb, you want to go high carb, or maybe you want to go somewhere in the middle, and that's for you to decide. And again, for us, what do we look at? We look at preference, we use that as a baseline, make some recommendations, what we think they might work better on, implement that for a while, see what happens, make some changes if needed. If not, then we keep going.
Yep.
Great. So that's that all covered, really. And then obviously, finally, we've got alcohol, which we're not going to cover too much today, but that is your other macronutrient. Yeah. What's next, Mike? Mindful eating?
Yeah. So mindful eating is just obviously our way of saying it's not just all about if it fits within your macros, go nuts and have however many McDonald's. It's our way of saying, you still need to be mindful with your food sources. So you still got to have that basal amount of fiber within your diet, to improve digestion and also to make sure that your diet is healthy and rich in, micronutrients, vitamins, minerals. So yeah, it's not just all about I can eat as much shit as I can to macros. You've still got to be mindful in that sense, but then you can allow yourself the 10 to 20%, which is there just for adherence purposes and just to take the pressure off, just to make it that little bit easier for you to be consistent. But we are still focusing really around a single ingredient, whole food sort of diet. Basically.
I think another good debate me and you could have is if it fits your macros versus a meal plan.
Yeah, sure.
That would be another great debate as well, and I think there are benefits to both, and we can go over that. This podcast isn't just about us slagging off anyone. It's not, like I said, I used to be pretty bro, and there are some elements of bro science which are effective, that can get results, and sometimes, we need to tap into that.
Jesus. Unprofessional.
Sorry, bro.
Yeah, so again, that would largely come down to preference. Some people, like you can't be too eager to push flexible dieting on everybody, because some people can't have that in their day-to-day life where they can have a little bit of something. Sometimes something just triggers. It might be a taste of food, and then they can't stop eating. We've all been there where you eat a biscuit and then you've eaten the pack. Yeah. So some people do.
They're great for dunking, aren't they?
Yeah, mate, the best.
The Dunkables, I like to call them. Yeah.
So then that person might do better on a stricter meal plan, because they might find that level of maybe
choice.
How to put it, that choice, and for them to know that being so precise at every single meal, every single day is the same, then it just gives them that peace of mind that they're on track, rather than having to worry about what to fit in. But then other people, for adherence purposes, do like to do flexible dieting, as we do. So there's no fast rule.
In myself, even compared to you and the other coaches, adopt a different type of flexible diet. Sure. You do what I would recommend, and you plan your day.
Yeah.
I don't plan my day. I just go with the flow, and then at the end of my day, I'm like, right, this is kind of what I'm left with. But I know that my knowledge of food is good, that I'm not going to be way out. I'm pretty much there or thereabouts. And the other part of flexible dieting for me, and this is what I've learned to be a lot more flexible, and I don't mean by eating more, going over my 80%, apart from on Quest Bar Day, but we won't get into that. What for me has made me more flexible is my ability to, let's say, use macronutrients or use calories from the day before, the day after, to swap macronutrients over through energy balance, i.e. maybe swap some carbohydrate for fats. And I can get into that, I think, on another podcast and really wrap that up as to what is flexible dieting. Yeah. A lot of people talk, you read a lot of blogs and I see them and they're like, oh, this is what flexible dieting's about. And I'm like thinking, no, it's not. You've only touched on one small part. You're only talking about that 10% of foods, which, yes, I think is better than having a cheat meal, but flexible dieting is so much more than that. It's about looking at the big picture, what really makes good results.
Yeah.
I think we can cover that on another podcast. But so our listener question today, Mike, we've kind of briefly touched on timing, but we can go, have another podcast more on nutrient timing specifically. So, let's pick one at random. We've got a few in, which is great. Okay, so this one is from Carly. She said, "Hi guys. Firstly, I want to say a massive thank you. Totally stoked that you guys have decided to start up your podcast. I've learned a lot of cool stuff already, and love your to the point, no bullshit, here bro approach. It's definitely what's needed. Anyway, I digress. I would like just to ask you guys, what's your opinion on post-workout nutrition, or more so supplementation? I find a lot of the time I don't always get the chance to get a proper post-workout meal due to being busy schedule. She's not making excuses, she promises. So she was wondering what supplements you would recommend to take post-workout. She's then asked, essentially, in terms of ingredients, knowing the best types of carbohydrates, slow release, fast released, and in what sort of combinations for digestion. She's then gone on to say, any advice you could give would be hugely appreciated. I know you must get inundated with emails and questions. Well, like we said, three.
Inundated.
3 for us is inundated, Yeah. Great. And she also said she loves your emails, mate.
What?
I know, your daily emails. And if you want the daily emails, you can go to team-box.co.uk. You'll find it. But you can sign up for our daily emails. They are, Mike...
Excellent.
Yeah. So, Mike, post-workout nutrition. We've already spoken briefly about protein, having it 3 to 5 hours apart. If you're kind of doing that from a whole mixed meal with a good, amino acid profile, you're probably fine. But if you can't get a meal in, then what would you do, Mike?
Yeah, so I'm going to start just with the sort of what people are sort of in the common belief when you go around gyms. The common belief is that as soon as you've finished your last set, you've got to be in the shower with a protein shake in one hand whilst your penis is in the other hand. You've got to get the protein shake in, and it's got to have some form of simple sugar in there.
Yeah.
Now, this is wrong.
Yeah.
So for me, if I had a serving 1 to 2 hours before of protein, then I wouldn't overly concern myself with a immediate protein shake, and I would be a little bit more relaxed and consume another serving. So given the recommendations we did earlier, within 1 to 2 hours post workout, and I would be fine with that. In terms of if a meal wasn't available, then yes, a whey protein shake is pretty convenient. It's easy to carry around. Some of them taste really nice, and they're relatively cheap as well. So although a tub might be £30 per serving, they're pretty cost effective. So
yeah, when it works out to be like £1 a serving,
yeah,
you can't beat that, can you? Really?
No.
Yeah.
No.
So I've actually got some examples here of what I would do. So even something as simple as this. This is like basically blueberry flavored protein quark.
Yeah.
Well, it's basically blueberry flavored quark. 20 grams a serving. It's about £1. Something like that, £1.50. Yeah. You could just put this in your bag. If you're at work and you get to the gym, you can just eat this after. 20 grams of whey protein. And again, it's going to be highly bioavailable in a good leucine rich. So you might go one of these, maybe 2, and that could be fine. Again, you can get some high protein yogurts. That would be really simple. Yeah. I am a big fan of these kind of things, just ready to drink. I keep them in the fridge.
Okay. Yeah. Just explain, because some people only listen to this.
Sorry. Yeah, obviously I'm just holding up to the camera. So the first one was a blueberry flavored quark kind of yogurt. Yeah. And then the second thing I've got is a ready to drink, ready-made protein drink. So there's I've got one here which is a My Protein Pro Milk. It's got 50 grams of protein per serving. You're looking at about 25 grams of carbohydrates and about 1.5 grams of fat, so very high in protein. And the reason why I personally like these sort of things, just for the taste, I find that the already made ones, because I can keep them in the fridge, for me a lot more pleasant. I can even put them on a little bit of ice, and that's a much nicer drink. You got like the For Goodness shakes. For Goodness shakes are good. They're great. They're cheap. You can choose how much carbohydrates you want. There's one which is higher ratio of protein to carbs. There's some really low fat options there. So they do a good mix really, and they're pretty cheap. Most stores, garages, most people sell those kind of things. Yeah. It's really easy to get your hands on that kind of stuff if you haven't prepared whey protein at home.
Protein bars as well. So protein bars, and again, even like some chocolate milk can be quite good.
Chocolate milk from Sainsbury's, lovely.
But in terms of carbohydrates, she touches on carbohydrate, and again, like I said before, that people think that you can only eat simple sugars post-workout, and that you've got to have them within X, Y, Z hours, whatever. I wouldn't be too worried about getting your dextrose in. Like she mentioned, she's done a bit of research. Unless you are like an endurance athlete or you're training
shortly
afterwards, the same muscle groups. If you're training tomorrow, as most of us do, so we'll do our training session and we'll have pretty much a full 24 hours off, then yes, sure, within the first couple of hours after training, glycogen resynthesis rates are slightly faster, but in the grand scheme, if you're not training until 24 hours later, you will have sufficiently topped up your glycogen levels to the same extent, regardless of when that carbohydrate ingestion took place, whether it was immediately post-workout through sugars or through lower GI carbohydrates spread throughout the 24 hours. And there's been shown to be no difference between low GI and high GI in terms of that.
And also with glycogen availability, they even took football players and put them through a 90-minute game, and they had test subjects where they gave them, nutrients intra-workout or intra-game, others which didn't, and even the guys who didn't, glycogen levels still weren't completely depleted. So again, it just shows that even with weight training, there's minimal glycogen in terms of depletion. It's nothing really too much to worry about. If you're hitting your daily amount, you're going to hit your daily amount.
I'll just run through what I do, because I actually do have 2 double days. So on my days where I train singly, I don't worry about post-workout carbs. And in fact, I usually train about 11ish. I get back in at maybe 12:30, and I usually cook like a chicken salad for lunch. So no carbohydrates, because I like to have my carbohydrates at the end of the day for preference, because that's the time when I'm going to overeat. However, the 2 double days, like today, I will have some carbohydrates with my meal afterwards. So, for example, today I ate an Oreo ice cream with my chicken salad. I also put some cauliflower rice in there, not a great deal of carbohydrates, but still more than I would usually have. And I've also had 2 rice cakes with some fat-free quark as well. So you can see how I've changed the way I eat, depending on how I train. But for most people who don't do double days, it's not that essential.
Yeah, for sure. Right, I think we'll leave it there, Mike. Again, thank you so much to our sponsors, MuscleFood. Again, the competition's still there, so if you want to enter, you can still got a chance. Next week, I'm not sure what we're going to record yet, but it could be the low-fat, high-carb debate. Stay tuned for us next week, and if you can leave us a review and subscribe, we'd be really, really grateful.
Awesome.
Take care, guys. See you later.
Thank you.
Cheers, Mike.
Bye.
Bye.